I'm Lloyd Dean. Grew up here at Hayes Crossing. I started the school at Little Prairie one-room school. We walked down the creek, but when water was in the creek, we walked along the hillside. They had two little rooms up there, grade 1 through 5 in one room and 6, 7, 8 in the other room. Well, when they started running school buses up here, John Kelly, my mom took me out of that school and put me on a school bus to go to Haldeman. So I went to the Haldeman Elementary School. In 1945, they took the last 2 years to Moorhead High. So I graduated in 8th grade up here, but I graduated from high school at Moorhead High School, which is where the superintendent's office is located here in town. I got out of high school in '49, started to college, majored in agriculture, health and PE, and history. And then I went 2.5 years, and Claudia Christian, a good friend of mine, started, and we both went to UK. There was no student teaching at Moorhead on agriculture, so he and I both went to UK, and he's the one that got the Apple Festival going over in Paintsville. I was there 2.5 years. I came home on the weekends. I told my dad, I said, everybody's gone. My brother dropped out of school, Korean War going on. I said, I'm going to quit at the end of this semester. So I quit at the end of the semester, joined the Air Force, 200 of us sworn in Louisville, and went from there on about 4 airplanes to San Antonio. And then later on, I was, of course, in Amarillo, Texas, overseas twice. I was in Guam, California, Idaho, England. So when I came out of the service in '57, I was married then. My wife is from here. Instead of going back to UK, you could do student teaching in Moorhead. And so I just came back to Moorhead and we finished up there. Got out of college in '59, got my master's in '59. There was no work. So we went to Felicity, Ohio in Clermont County. We were up there 4 years. A job came open in Carter County in '63. So my wife and I moved back to Carter County, and I was the first counselor in Carter County. Wilma Jean Barker had Olive Hill, and I had 22 other schools. And then, of course, this job came open at Rowan County High July 1st of '70, so we moved back here to Hayes Crossing. And I retired in '91 from Rowan County High School.
Well, Lloyd, let's go into a little bit of the history of the county. What exactly was the Rowan County War?
Rowan County, as well as the other counties of Kentucky, were divided over the Civil War. Families, one went with the North, one with the South. Of course, Hatfield-McCoy feud came out of that, Underwood War in Carter County, the Martin Tolliver War here in Rowan County. Basically, they had their roots in that. My great-grandpa from Ellettville, Jim Embers Thomas, signed to get Craig Tolliver out of jail here in Moorhead. That's the only thing I ever found he did and had part in was that. And I think people around Ellettville were afraid not to sign because if they refused to sign, they would have become an enemy to that family. That's the only reason I think they signed to get him out of jail. We had about 25 people got killed during that war. They took one man off a train in Farmers and shot him, killed him, his wife right there on the train with him. It was a horrible time, a terrible time. The National Guard was sent in. I have an old picture, and it's already been printed, of the National Guard that was sent in to have quietness here in town. But the war really ended up on Railroad Street, right across from where the depot is.
Yeah. Well, you know, kind of the ending of that war led to the forming of the normal school. Was the Rowan County War the reason for the normal school being founded?
Yes, they were really looking, I guess, for a place where the railroad went through a community. People could come in on the train. We were really an isolated area until that time. And so they had spiritual values, which was really outstanding and good. I appreciate that. And of course it grew from a normal school to, when I started there in 1949, it was just Moorhead State College. And then in '67 it became a university. When I was in the Air Force in California, I wrote to the president of Citizens Bank, and I said, over the street of Riverside, California, there's a neon sign that says Riverside. I said, it'd be nice if Moorhead could have a sign that people pass through, they don't even know the name of the community. So back then it was the Board of Trade, and he wrote me later, said, I took it up to the Board of Trade, and he said, we're going to buy 2 lights, one at each end of town, and he said, it's going to cost us $300 for 2 lights. He said, now if you come in on the Greyhound from California, you sit up close to the front, and said when you pass Brady Curve, you can look up and see the light. So if you ride on the train into Moorhead, said you also sit on the left side and then look up to your left, said you'll see a sign that says Moorhead, home of Morehead College. That stayed there until 1967 when it became a university and they took it down.
Now, did you ever know when the normal school opened in 1887, did you ever know any of the former normal school students or graduates? You ever heard any stories with them?
Over the years, of course, I was born in 1930. There was a few of them around, and right now I cannot recall any of their names, but I know that we did through the school system where they were involved with activities that we had in school.
When you were growing up, what was the town of Moorhead like at that point?
It was a small place. All the traffic went through there. People would come, since they had the railroad, they'd order in all kinds of stuff. If they had a store in Sandy Hook or maybe Flemingsburg, over in Menifee County, they'd bring horses and wagons, and they'd pick up groceries and whatever they were ordering for their store. So that brought people in that way to Moorhead. I know the Vice President of the United States at that time, he made a little appearance in Moorhead and talked to people there. And so Moorhead became an educational center after the normal school began. It's like Pippa Passes, Alice Lloyd, Berea, they served a need, and people wanted to come here and be a part of that.
Now, what we were talking about earlier, I saw that WIMT documentary about the Great Flood of '39. What exactly was the event, and how bad was it for this community, the flood of '39?
We lived right up the road up here. We'd been to Ella County that day to visit my grandma and grandpa. So we came back that afternoon. The clouds were dark, rolling. Nobody ever seen anything like that before. That night we got lightning, and up here on the Carter County line, about a mile from us, the rain started. It was like bucketfuls that came down, and it wasn't very long. With the lightning flashing, making it almost daytime, water was from hill to hill. Well, everything from here to Moorhead is downhill, all the way into Farmers. So it picked up speed out of the Triplet Creek here, Haldeman Creek, Big Prairie Creek, Little Prairie Creek, Ellettville, and so the speed was picking up. It just pretty well wiped everything in its way. In Moorhead, along the tire yards, the railroad, they had tires stacked up, and they just disintegrated when the water got up around them. Everything flooded on Main Street, and if I could read a little poem here that I did before, that pretty well describes, and I have grown up listening to these stories all my life. I did experience it. We lost a crib of corn. We lost an outside toilet. My mom lost pots and pans that was there by the creek. We had a field of wheat that was just right up the road up here that was cut and shocked up. It all washed away. And so it was a nightmare. I might say right now, if that flood would come now, it's possible that nobody would drown. Because 1939, nobody had any electricity around. Everything was dark. No such thing as outside lights. Battery radios. We had no CBs, pagers, or nothing like that. One policeman in Moorhead is all you had. And so everybody was caught off guard. One man I knew that later on he let me set up a tent right where the post office is located now. That was nothing but houses down in there. He lost his wife and all of his kids. They washed away. They found people in trees, lost in fence rows, everything. This pretty well describes it. This was written by Versi Ham. And by the way, his brother just got killed recently crossing the road. He was a volunteer at Life Care Center, and they had a memorial service for him. To the beautiful town of Moorhead in the old Kentucky state, on 4th night of July 39, there came a terrible fate. Men, women, and little children were awakened by the midnight cry, "Our city will soon be flooded, for the waters are raging high." Everyone began praying, some who never prayed before. "O God, save our city. We will never sin anymore." But the water never stopped or lingered. It came with an onrushing beat, and buildings, both public and private, were crashed upon the street. For 4 long and dreary hours, the rain kept pouring down. The water then had covered almost 1/2 of our town. Railroad Street was flooded with water 10 feet or more. It was raising up on Main Street, where the water had never been before. 25 of our citizens perished, while hundreds were left without homes. Fathers, mothers, and children were left to weep and moan. I love the town of Moorhead, but God loves it best of all. He saw the doings within it, so for sin she got her call. Dear people listening to God's word, take heed to what it said. Look not upon the wineglass when the wine within is red. It biteth thy tongue like a serpent, like an adder it stingeth within. It is full of deadly poison, been the ruin of many men. Dear people of Moorhead and elsewhere, be ready when Christ doth come to dwell in that celestial city where rain and floods never come. He copyrighted this in 1947 before he passed away.
The flood, after the flood, did they do a lot of work to try to make the creeks wider or to try to stop the town from ever getting flooded again?
At that particular time, we didn't have road equipment like they had today. And even they still were using horses with shovels and doing a lot of it by hand. But they did do the best they could. I wish on both sides of the creek there was a flood wall. Moorhead in the last 15 years has suffered several floods. We had a student in Brown County High several years ago drowned. A log was floating by. He jumped on the log to ride it and it turned over, and so we found him a week later in a fence road down close to Farmers. So we've had some bad flooding here in the last 15 years in Moorhead. We definitely need to set off some areas that are floodplains and not build anything in that area.
Oh yeah, well, just 3 weeks ago or a month ago, flooded down Main Street once again. All right, when you were a kid, Lloyd, growing up, before you went to college, what was your thoughts of the college campus then? Did it seem like a grand scene?
Well, the Navy was there. I was like 14 years old, 15. They hired a lot of people to work from here. I wanted to work, but I had no way down there to work in the kitchen. They were hiring people that young then. My uncle worked, different ones worked there. I wanted to get a bicycle and ride. Couldn't afford a bicycle. Finally bought one later for $2.50. But anyway, I look forward to going to college. My dad worked in the mines all his life. That was a dangerous situation. His best friend working right beside of him. One day, a slab fell and killed him instantly. Then my dad worked in a brickyard until they closed in 1950. I didn't want to spend my life in the brickyard, or I didn't want to spend it in a mine here in this area, even though they had a lot of fatalities and things. And they did make good money as far as that was concerned back then. So I was basically interested in agriculture. When I went to Morehead High, I got involved with FFA, and I was the first from Rowan County to make American Farmer. And got on a train in Moorhead, went to Kansas City, Missouri, received that award. And so I was basically, and also I coached intramural at the college, had an independent team up here at Haldeman. When I went in the Air Force, I coached in the Air Force intramural and also at the YMCA in Riverside, California. So I was interested in agriculture plus sports.
Well, you mentioned the Navy being on campus back then. If you will, describe a little bit why the Navy was on campus.
Moorhead, as well as I remember then, only had about 152 students. 150 girls, 2 boys. The 2 boys didn't pass for the service, as well as I remember all that. They were looking for a place where they could set up a radio school. And they looked at these colleges that had low enrollment but had rooms and dormitories and that type of thing. So Moorhead was chosen to become a radio school. And I guess they brought the Navy down from Chicago, Great Lakes, and they'd come in on the train. Well, there was nothing really to do in Moorhead. All week long they'd be sitting on the sidewalk, streets full of Navy boys walking them down the street. They'd be out marching, they'd march in the streets. That's the only place they had to march. And so when I got in the Air Force and I visited San Diego, California, as soon as I went to San Diego, I thought, this is like Moorhead. Thousands of Navy boys everywhere, sitting on the sidewalks, benches, walking up and down the street, really nothing to do. But San Diego was a big city compared to us here in Moorhead.
What story of the founding of the normal school and later the state school and college do you like to hear the most? Was it Frank and Phoebe Button or Allie Young or any of those people?
Well, I'll say something about Allie Young, a young lawyer. He was instrumental in getting roads built, instrumental in getting to college here in Moorhead later on. As being on the Historical Society, we ended up getting that little building across from the memorial wall. Well, we were in the process of improving it, but the Historical Society just doesn't have that much money. But we thought, and I still feel today, it was in good structural foundation to be that old. It served as barbershops and different things over the years. Of course, the university owned that property, and so I had the Historical Society to erect a sign there like we have at the depot downtown, also on the lawn of the old courthouse. Now, the normal school, they were really, in a sense, missionaries to Eastern Kentucky. They were interested not just in Moorhead, they were interested in raising the standard of living for all the Eastern Kentuckians. So many people couldn't even read and write. I've gone through many, many deeds over the years, and in fact, I saw one this week where they just put their mark. They couldn't write their name. So I want to give them credit for being early people in getting educationally minded thoughts in people's minds here in Eastern Kentucky.
Oh yeah. I've always read that Frank Button and Allie Young didn't always get along. Did you ever read into any of that?
Well, I don't know. It could be Allie Young felt like maybe his roots were here more than Button's roots were here. Of course, Button Auditorium, was named after them. And I remember Dr. Baird of Baird Music Hall, he was the speaker at our high school graduation in '49. Moorhead remained a small school, but really what helped Moorhead start getting off the ground was when the war was over, these Navy boys liked Moorhead so well, many of them came back and went to school here. And I later on was in college with them myself. They were a lot older than me, but I was a freshman out of high school and we had classes together. Then the GI Bill came and that was a tremendous help to get Moorhead going. And I might mention Adrian Dorn. When he came here, it just flourished. I know I worked with him on projects before. He asked, when they got to nursing school here, he asked me if I'd serve on that committee. Since I was president of the Eastern Kentucky Guidance Association. And so I work with him on a lot of different things.
Lloyd, of the Moorhead you remember growing up, what aspect of the old Moorhead do you miss the most?
I really hate to say what I'm getting ready to say. Moorhead now is, downtown area is almost dead compared to what it was when US 60 was here and no interstates or nothing like that. It was booming, but they closed down at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Saturday nights, practically everything stayed open. Town was full of people on Saturday night going to the movies. We had 2 movie theaters, the Middleton Trail and the, can't think right now, it'll come to me a little bit maybe. One was up that street where the old post office used to be, and the others are on Main Street. But anyway, all your doctor's offices up and down through there, your 10-cent stores are up and down through there, clothing stores up and down through there, hardware stores. It was a busy, busy place. And of course, they'd come here too from Elliott County, Fleming County, Menifee, Morgan, and they would trade. But it seemed like Saturday night was like a lot of these little towns. Everybody went to town on Saturday night.
Oh yeah. The name of that theater was, I just saw a picture of it the other day. It was the, I can't get it right now either. Right there on the corner across from Pasquale's now.
Yes.
They're going to turn that building into a restaurant, or they hope to anyway. That was,
Yes.
I can't remember the name of it either. But what happened to all the business on Main Street, Lloyd? Because, the years I've been in Moorhead, it's always kind of been like it is now. They just kind of move away with the interstate.
Many of the owners died off. I've seen this happen a lot of times, that their kids or children didn't want to pursue the same occupation. And we have today, back then everything was owned by the local people. Now you have all these fast food restaurants and all these other stores coming in, and their headquarters maybe in Arkansas or another state, Tennessee or whatever. And so we've lost that local ownership that we had back then. Because, it was like a mom and pop stores. You knew the people, you got acquainted with them. You could charge, back then. And of course you can't do that today, but there's no such thing as credit cards back then.
Who was, kind of off the question list here, but who was Ed Maggard? I've read stories about Ed Maggard being a tinkerer, and he was an inventor, and he had some cool stories.
Yeah, if you go down toward Railroad Street where the traditional music building is now, where used to be the library, we had a movie theater there. Really, some of the early movies, films, the early equipment was produced right here in Moorhead. The idea came from people who lived right here in Moorhead. Maybe they were ahead of times, I don't know, and then later became Calvert Garage. But Moorhead really could, I guess, capitalize on being one of the first in the nation producing movie equipment.
Yeah, Ed Maggard had a patent on a type of projector. That was interesting.
Yes.
And he built a lot of the buildings around Main Street, I believe.
Yes.
And J.D. Reader was telling me that. Well, Lloyd, what has the university here in Moorhead meant to the people of Eastern Kentucky and Rowan County? If this university was never here, would it make, has the university made that much of a difference to the people's lives?
If Moorhead University was not here, and I don't want to run down these other communities at all, that's just farthest from me, but they would be small, like Sandy Hook, like West Liberty, like Menifee County, even Flemingsburg. We'd just be a little railroad town like Olive Hill, where the railroad went through. University brought fame to Moorhead. Moorhead's a wealthy town. We've got a lot of banks here now that proves that. With the factories here, university, 10,000 students, the school system employing hundreds of people, state offices located here, and of course the distribution center and that area building up out there. There's a lot of money circulating in Moorhead, Kentucky. And so we get a lot of people here that drive from other counties that work at the hospital, university, in the school system, state offices. So we don't only serve Rowan County and Moorhead, we're serving Eastern Kentucky.
That's right. Well, Lloyd, another question off the list. What exactly was the brickyard factory up Haldeman Way? What was the history on that?
We had a man by the name of Conley, and he had a McNess route, and he'd sell stuff out of a wagon from Portsmouth, Ohio. He had a son-in-law named L.P. Haldeman who lived in Columbus, Ohio. They were originally out of Pennsylvania. And so when they dug the tunnel and they dug the railroad cut, it's when they discovered clay. Well, contacts were made. Haldeman was interested. They had money to back them. They teamed up with a group in Louisville, and they started the brickyard. We had number one brickyard, which was started in 1895. Haldeman name hadn't come yet, so they had Rowan. I've got about 2 of those brick myself, a few others scattered around that just says Rowan on it. In 1907, the post office came into existence. And so they started putting his name, Haldeman, on there because they named the community after him. L.P. Haldeman, it's Lansford Paul Haldeman. And then we built the brickyard number 2, which is right at the fork where you stay on 174 and go toward the Haldeman Community Center. That's built in 1917. The red school that I went to when I left Little Prairie one-room school was built in 1925, and it's named Haldeman School. And then, of course, later on, 1937, they built the Haldeman School, WPA times. They built Ellettville, they built Farmers, they built Haldeman, they built all the voting houses out of that rock, came from Bluestone, Kentucky. Also your framework and the bridges of the US 60 up through here, that all came out of Bluestone down there. And so Haldeman became a company that shipped by railroad bricks all over the United States. My cousin had a restaurant right here at Hayes Crossing several years ago. I forget the boy's name, but he had just came back from Germany and the Army. And he said, I was walking down a sidewalk in Germany one day and I looked down and there was a brick that said Haldeman, Kentucky. So this is all over the world. Thousands of bricks was shipped out to steel mills. And of course, a lot of them went to Chicago, Inland Steel in that area, Pennsylvania area. Haldeman had a large brick home he built He died in 1941. In fact, I have a book I'm going to give you with his obituary in it, his picture, in Florida. He was to Haldeman, I guess, what we say the Buttons were to Moorhead as far as education is concerned. He sponsored the basketball team. He sponsored had the first girls basketball team up there. We had an independent baseball team. It was still going in the 40s, and I remember Bill Monroe, String Bean, and all those people would come. They'd play at Soldier, they'd play here, play at Salt Lick. They just did a tour, and every little town that had a baseball team, they'd stop and play ball.
Now, where the Haldeman Community Center is now, was that the school?
Yes, it was. When it burnt down, I got 14 people together. We organized a corporation, got all of our tax numbers. Willie Roberts in Moorhead was a tremendous help to us. The judge was a tremendous help to us. A lot of people was a great help to us getting the things going, getting it started. And then we've gotten several little grants. We have an in-school program going now. We rent it out for weddings and all sorts of things. We have a car show coming up the second Saturday of May. Haldeman reunion, we've had that even before they started. So we have a lot of Gourd Festival now in September every year. So we have a lot of programs going on up there.
Now up through there, a lot of the houses up around that area, were they company houses, so to speak? Did they build houses?
They were. Everything was company houses at one time. In fact, I got pictures of those. Many of them were sold to individuals, and they redesigned them, repainted them. They're pretty well all just painted gray.
Yeah. Now, when you go down, you go past the school, and you start to go up the hill, I always noticed that it looked like some of those brick was used on the house kind of down there, right below when you start to go up the hill past the school. Was that some of the brick from some of the old buildings?
That was brick from the brickyard. It used to be a store.
Oh.
Back in the 40s, that was a busy store there. Yeah.
Well, Lloyd, that's all my questions. Do you have anything you'd like to add about the history of the town and the university, or any good stories that we might not have heard before?
Probably one of the sad stories would be that he was a few years ahead of me in school. Lee Clark played basketball up there, and his dad was Stoner Clark. They're all dead now, but Lee died in a battalion death march. 2 years almost after he got out of high school, he was in the Army and ended up over there and died in a battalion death march. We had one of the best first indoor gymnasiums in eastern Kentucky. We had one of the best basketball, girls and boys, in eastern Kentucky. We had a professional team, baseball up there, and they had a professional basketball team at one time. But when it closed in 1950, my dad was given a $50 pension. A lot of others were given $50 pensions. A few of them wanted to still work, so they were transferred to Olive Hill, work at that brickyard. A few other places. Some went to Dayton, Detroit, and Middletown to get a job and raise their families up there. So it pretty well died out. Later on, the post office closed down. But when I tried to get that building, and we couldn't afford it. They asked maybe over $100,000 for it. We couldn't afford that. But when it burnt, we were able to get it for about $35,000, and we've done a lot of improvement. We tried for that $1 million grant. We missed out on it twice, but we're trying again to get it. We want to build it back just like it was. Have a library, a museum, kitchens, restrooms. Our goal is to build it back just like it was.
Good. I would love to see that happen, Lloyd. We need to preserve our communities like that.
Yes.
Well, Lloyd, I think that'll do us today, buddy.